When you were a kid, kung fu movies had a way of making the world feel bigger. A living room could turn into a training ground, a broomstick could become a weapon, and for a couple of hours, stars like Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, and Jet Li felt almost superhuman. They were fast, fearless, and impossible to ignore. But childhood heroes do not stay frozen in time. The years move on, the faces change, and the legends we once watched in awe begin to look a little different from how we remember them. So today, we are taking a nostalgic look back at these iconic kung fu stars and seeing what they look like now. For many people, Jackie Chan was the kind of star who made kung fu movies impossible to forget. He did not just fight on screen. He flew, crashed, rolled, climbed, and turned almost anything around him into part of the action. There was always something exciting about the way he moved. He had the speed, the acrobatic skill, and that playful energy that made even the most dangerous scenes feel alive. For a whole generation, watching Jackie Chan meant watching someone who made the impossible look fun. Born in Hong Kong, Jackie Chan began far from the image of the global icon he would later become. He first worked as a stuntman, building his reputation through sheer discipline, physical courage, and relentless effort. Then came the breakthrough that changed everything. In 1978, his performance as Wong Fei-hung in Drunken Master sent his career soaring and introduced audiences to a style that felt fresh, inventive, and completely his own. He was not just a martial artist. He was a performer who could blend flawless combat, sharp comic timing, and breathtaking acrobatics in a way few others could match. That unique formula carried him through a remarkable run of films, from Police Story and Rush Hour to Kung Fu Panda, and helped make him one of the most recognizable action stars in the world. But part of what made Jackie so beloved was also what made his journey feel costly. He built his legend by performing his own stunts, often pushing his body through punishing falls, brutal impacts, and one injury after another. Behind the laughter, the precision, and the crowd-pleasing charm was a man who paid for that magic in real pain. As the years passed, that became part of the sadness behind the image. The fearless young star who once seemed indestructible was, after all, only human. Jackie has also spoken openly about struggles with depression, and in later years he expanded his life beyond film through music and charity work, supporting many causes and serving as a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador. That may be why Jackie Chan still means so much to people now. He was never just a hero from the screen. He was the rare kind of legend who made every fall, every bruise, and every comeback feel unforgettable. Bolo Yeung was the kind of presence that could make a fight feel intense before it even started. He barely needed an introduction. One look at his towering build, his controlled expression, and that unmistakable sense of power was enough to tell audiences they were looking at someone unforgettable. For many martial arts fans, Bolo was more than a supporting villain. He was one of those rare screen figures who made the hero's journey feel tougher, more dangerous, and far more exciting to watch. Born in China in the early 1940s, Bolo Yeung began training in martial arts as a child. At the same time, he developed a strong interest in bodybuilding, and that combination would eventually shape his entire image. After winning the Mr. Hong Kong bodybuilding contest, a title he held for 10 years, he earned the nickname Chinese Hercules. It was a perfect fit. Directors were drawn to his extraordinary physique and obvious strength, and that attention helped open the door to film. Still, it was his role as the antagonist in Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon that truly changed everything. That performance put him in front of a much wider audience and established him as one of the most memorable faces in martial arts cinema. Bruce Lee himself admired Bolo's fighting ability and strong on-screen presence, and the two grew close enough to begin training together. That connection helped strengthen Bolo's standing in the genre even further. In the 1980s, Bolo Yeung found another important chapter in his career when he appeared alongside Jean-Claude Van Damme in films like Bloodsport and Double Impact. His sheer physical dominance worked perfectly against Van Damme's fast and daring style, and the contrast made both men even more memorable on screen. Off-camera, Bolo became known for the same discipline that defined his image. He kept a strict diet, followed a demanding exercise routine, and continued training seriously well into his later years. That is part of what still makes people curious about him now. Even after decades, Bolo Yeung remains one of those martial arts legends whose image is instantly recognizable, a man whose strength, discipline, and screen presence never really went out of style. There was a period when Tony Jaa felt like a shock to the system. At a time when action movies were leaning harder into wires, camera tricks, and polished choreography, he came in with something much rawer. His fight scenes looked painful, fast, and real in a way that instantly got people talking. For many fans, that was the thrill of Tony Jaa. He did not seem interested in looking safe. He made action feel physical again, and that alone gave him a different kind of presence. Born in February 1976 inches, Surin, Thailand, and raised in a rural area, Tony Jaa built his skills in an unusually grounded way. The original script paints that image clearly. Part movie, inspired obsession, part hard training in his father's rice field. Over time, he became proficient in a wide range of disciplines, including Taekwondo, Muay Thai, Aikido, Judo, and Jiu-Jitsu. Long before international recognition arrived, he already carried that mix of athletic discipline and deep fascination with performance that would define his career. He was not only a martial artist, but also an actor and action choreographer, and that combination helped him stand out once the right opportunity came. In 2003, that breakthrough finally arrived with Ong Bak, Muay Thai Warrior and The Protector, two films that pushed him into the international spotlight and made audiences pay attention to just how explosive his style could be. What the script really emphasizes, though, is Tony Jaa's commitment to authenticity. He avoided wires and stunt doubles, choosing a bruising, ultra-real approach that made his fight scenes feel more intense than many of his contemporaries. That choice became part of his identity. It also made him feel like a throwback to an earlier era, which is probably why some people started seeing him as a kind of heir to Bruce Lee's throne. Then, in a turn that made his story even more interesting, he stepped away from the entertainment industry in 2010 to begin a spiritual journey as a Buddhist monk. He returned in 2013, and since then he has continued appearing in films like Skin Trade, Furious 7, and XXX, Return of Xander Cage. Even with that success, the script describes him as grounded and still deeply committed to training every day. That is where the curiosity comes in now. Tony Jaa is no longer just the breakout force who stunned audiences years ago. He is also one of those stars people still watch with quiet interest, wondering how much more he still has left to show. Not every kung fu legend became famous the same way, and Lo Mang always felt a little different from the rest. He had the martial arts skill people expected, of course. But there was also something more refined about him. He was not just built around action. There was a sense of tradition in the way his image was described, almost as if he represented an older, more complete version of the kung fu star. For fans who grew up watching classic Hong Kong martial arts films, that is part of what still makes him so memorable now. Born in Hong Kong, Lo Mang began his martial arts journey at a very young age, training under respected masters and steadily building the discipline that would define his career. His dedication eventually led him to the attention of Shaw Brothers Studios, one of the most important film production companies in Asian cinema. Once that door opened, his rise came quickly. With strong combat ability, natural charisma, and deep training in styles such as Taiji Quan and Southern Praying Mantis, Lo Mang carved out a lasting place for himself in kung fu film history. The original script highlights films like The Five Venoms, Shaolin Temple, and Executioners from Shaolin as part of the work that made his name stand out. It also notes that in 2019, he appeared in Ip Man 4, a reminder that his presence had not completely disappeared even decades after his prime. Among all of his performances, His role as Changqing in The Saviors of Shaolin is singled out as his most iconic. What makes Lo Mang especially interesting, though, is that his talents were never limited to acting alone. The script describes him as a man of many abilities, someone who also had a gift for painting and calligraphy, often creating artwork inspired by scenes from the kung fu films he loved most. He also mastered several traditional Chinese musical instruments and sometimes incorporated music into his martial arts presentations, giving audiences something more unusual and personal than a standard performance. That detail adds a different kind of curiosity to his story now. Even after stepping away from acting, Lo Mang did not simply vanish into the past. At 69, the script says he remained energetic, continued refining his martial arts skills, and took on the role of instructor, passing his knowledge on to a new generation. That is why Lo Mang still stands out. He was never just a fighter on screen. He carried the feeling of an entire cultural tradition with him, and in many ways, he still does. The interesting thing about Donnie Yen was that he never felt like just another action star. Even at his most explosive, there was always something unusually controlled about him, and that may be exactly why audiences never stopped watching. The speed was there, the power was there, but what really made him stand out was the sense that every move came from skill, discipline, and a deeper understanding of martial arts, rather than pure showmanship alone. Born in Guangzhou, China, in 1963, Donnie Yen's path stretched across several worlds before he became an international icon. His family moved to Hong Kong when he was very young, and later settled in Boston, Massachusetts, when he was 11. Martial arts entered his life early through his mother, a Tai Chi expert who gave him his first training and helped build the foundation he would carry for decades. From there, his curiosity only grew. He studied multiple disciplines over the years, including Wing Chun, a style that would later become so central to his identity that he even passed parts of it on to Robert Downey Jr. for Iron Man 3. Long before Ip Man turned him into a global name, Yen had already appeared in films like Wing Chun, Iron Monkey, and Hero, quietly building a reputation for combat ability and choreography that went well beyond the ordinary. Then came the role that changed everything. As the legendary Grandmaster Ip Man, Donnie Yen reached a new level of recognition, and the original script notes that he mastered the technique in just 9 months. That detail alone says a great deal about the precision and discipline people have always associated with him. What makes Donnie Yen even more impressive is how much of his legacy was built behind the scenes as well as in front of the camera. Across more than 70 films and television programs, he proved not only that he could carry major roles, but also that he could shape action itself. He choreographed fight scenes for Hollywood productions such as Blade 2 and Highlander, Endgame, and over time, his name came to represent a level of quality audiences trusted. Even now, there is still a quiet curiosity around him because he never seemed like someone content to live only on past achievements. The script describes him as grounded, humble, and still willing to push his physical and mental limits through constant training. At 58, he was said to remain in exceptional shape, which makes his story feel less like a closed chapter and more like the ongoing legacy of a man who never stopped refining what made him extraordinary. No martial arts icon ever shook the screen quite like Bruce Lee. He brought a level of speed, force, and intensity that changed how on-screen combat was seen forever. More than a movie star, he became a symbol whose influence reached far beyond Hollywood. Even now, his name still carries a kind of power that few legends ever reach, which says a lot about how deeply he changed both cinema and martial arts itself. Born in San Francisco, California, and raised in a family of performers from Hong Kong, Bruce Lee stepped into martial arts early under the guidance of his father. By the age of 13, he was already training in Wing Chun, laying the foundation for a journey that would eventually reshape the modern image of the martial arts star. At 18, he moved to the United States and studied philosophy at the University of Washington, but academics never pulled him away from combat training. He kept practicing, kept teaching, and eventually opened his own school in Seattle. What made Bruce Lee so compelling was that he was never limited to one role. He was a fighter, a teacher, a thinker, and a performer with undeniable screen presence. His work in Hollywood and Hong Kong helped turn him into an international force, with Enter the Dragon becoming the film that sealed his place in cinema history. His role as Kato in The Green Hornet also helped make him recognizable to a much wider audience. Beyond the screen, his intellectual side remained just as striking through his writings on philosophy and martial arts, especially Tao of Jeet Kune Do. What makes Bruce Lee's story feel even bigger is how much he accomplished in so little time. The original script emphasizes that his life was cut short at just 32, yet in those brief years he rose to the level of kung fu master, created his own systems, first Jun Fan Gung Fu and later Jeet Kune Do, wrote influential books, broke tradition by teaching Chinese martial arts to Westerners, and became one of the greatest movie stars the world had ever seen. That is where the sadness in his story quietly settles in. Bruce Lee was not only extraordinary because of what he achieved, he remains unforgettable because it still feels like his life ended long before his impact did. Even now, his legacy does not feel like something that belongs only to the past. It still feels alive. Before a lot of people even realized how skilled he was, Yuen Biao was already doing the kind of physical work that most actors could not come close to matching. He moved with a speed and lightness that made everything look effortless, which was probably why his action scenes stayed in people's minds for so long. There was always something exciting about watching him. He did not need the loudest image in the room. His acrobatic ability did enough talking on its own. Born in Hong Kong on the 26th of July 1957, Yuen Biao entered the China Drama Academy at the age of 5, where he became the youngest student there. That alone says a lot about how early his path began. It was also where some of the most important relationships of his life were formed. At the academy, he built lasting friendships with Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung, and that circle would shape much of his career in the years ahead. After remaining there until the age of 16, he moved to America with Master Jim Yuen and began the next stage of his journey. At first, he only landed minor roles in films like The Shrine of Ultimate Bliss and The Hand of Death, but the breakthrough came in 1979 when Sammo Hung cast him in Knockabout, giving him the first major opportunity to truly stand out. From there, his career kept rising. His work in The Prodigal Son, Project A, On the Run, and The Iceman Cometh helped establish him as one of the most respected and agile performers in martial arts cinema. What makes Yuen Biao interesting now is that his story carries a quieter kind of curiosity. He was once one of the most acclaimed and acrobatic stars in the genre, someone whose talent was obvious to anyone watching closely. But in later years, his presence in newer films became more limited, and the original script points to his dissatisfaction with the current state of screenwriting as one reason for that shift. That detail makes his path feel slightly different from some of the others. It was not just time changing the industry. It was also a matter of standards, taste, and what he no longer found worth doing. In his private life, the script notes that he later met his wife, Didi Pang Sao Ha, while working as a stunt coordinator, and that the two went on to have 2 children. These days, he is said to spend part of his time at his second home in Canada, where he enjoys golf. Maybe that is part of why Yuen Biao still feels so intriguing now. He was never only about fame. He was one of those stars whose talent spoke loudly enough that even his quieter life still leaves people wondering about him. The first time Jet Li appeared on screen, he looked like someone built for martial arts cinema. Every move felt clean, every strike felt controlled, and the discipline behind it was impossible to miss. He did not need to overplay anything to look impressive. The skill spoke for itself. That was a big part of what made Jet Li so compelling from the start. He carried the kind of presence that could satisfy real martial arts fans while still feeling magnetic enough for a worldwide audience. Born in Beijing, China, Jet Li entered martial arts at a very young age and quickly showed unusual talent in wushu. By the age of 11, he was already competing in national events and winning gold medals across different tournaments, a level of achievement that made it clear he was not just gifted, but exceptional. The original script even notes that his abilities caught the attention of President Nixon, who reportedly wanted the young Jet Li to serve as a personal bodyguard. But instead of following that path, he turned toward acting, and that decision changed his life. His film debut in the Shaolin Temple in 1982 introduced him as a rising star, and after building major success in the Chinese market, he made his way into Hollywood with Lethal Weapon 4 inches 1998. From there, his screen legacy only expanded through films like Once Upon a Time in China, Romeo Must Die, The One, The Forbidden Kingdom, and The Expendables. The script also describes his style as flowing and shaped by speed, power, and control, which is exactly how his best performances still feel today. What continues to make Jet Li so interesting now is that his story was never only about film success. Even after becoming one of the world's most recognized martial arts stars, he remained closely connected to the roots that first shaped him. The original script points out that he later founded his own martial arts academy, sharing his knowledge with students from different ages and backgrounds. That detail gives his legacy a little more weight, because it shows that for Jet Li, martial arts was never just something to perform, it was something to preserve and pass on. The script presents him as one of the greatest martial artists and actors of all time, and at 59, still maintaining a level of fitness and agility that stood out. That is where the curiosity around him still remains. Jet Li was one of those rare stars who made greatness look disciplined, graceful, and almost effortless all at once. As the light fades and the golden glow of another era slips a little further into the distance, these kung fu stars feel less like movie icons and more like pieces of memory we still carry with us. Some are still here, still standing, still reminding us of the power they once brought to the screen, and some, sadly, now live only through the films they left behind. That may be why looking back at them feels so special. It is not only about seeing how they look today, it is also about remembering what they meant when they were at their peak, and realizing how much of that feeling never really left us. So tell me, which of these legends do you remember most clearly? Let me know in the comments below.